Hello, everybody, and welcome to
Get
Virtual
down.
Bourbon.
Get
My
down.
name is Steve
Get down,
Akeley.
kitty. Get down on kitty.
Tim, you already got your first one.
Get
My name
there,
is Steve
kitty.
Akeley. We're going to be doing an event today. We've got Tim Swide is going to be my co-host here. He's going to put anybody on mute if their microphone is still open, and then just put it off whenever any sound goes away, that type of thing. So he's helping us out today, kind of behind the scenes. And we're going to be talking about, we're going to have some old granddad from what year was it, Wes?
No, we're not having old granddad at all.
Oh,
No.
what are we having?
We're having Stitzel-Weller cabin still.
That's right, Stitzel-Weller cabin still from 73.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I got that part right. I got half credit. So we got Stitzel-Weller from 73 that we're going to be trying, and of course we've got a Weller from today, a special reserve, and we don't know what's what. We're going to be having the fun of seeing if we can guess what is what. That's always fun. The legend has a streak going. He's never missed one of these, and he's very quick to point that out. So it'll be interesting to see. All eyes will be on Rick to see if he gets this right tonight. So he does not want that streak to end, but we'll see. So it should be a fun event. Stitzel-Weller, known as some of the greatest bourbon that's ever been made. And of course, Wes gives us a lot of good background information when he does these. So with that, I'd like to turn over to our host for this evening, Mr. Wes Hardin.
How's everyone doing?
Hey, Wes. Wes.
All right, so I'm excited about this one. It's been one of the target Dusties for a while. Any kind of Stitzel-Weller it's Stitzel-Weller. So, I mean, doesn't really matter what brand. It could be Pappy, it could be Old Fitzgerald, it could be Cabin Still, which is what we're going to have. But the key to it is I like this comparison because what we're drinking tonight, we're doing this blind, obviously. What we're drinking tonight is about as evenly matched from a current product to a previous product, especially considering the lineage of today's Weller Special Reserve, obviously Weller. The Cabin Still came from the Stitzel-Weller facility. They're both 90 proof. Both are non-age stated, but they're around the similar type of ages in that 6-year range, give or take. So when you're trying to drink bourbon that old and compare it to what they're doing today, it's a pretty close one-on-one comparison. So that's part of the reason I chose. They're both wheaters, so that makes it even better. So I'm super excited about that. What we want to do, everyone, and by the way, if you have everyone's sample, you should have a sample 2. There's going to be a handful of people that received a sample 2 and then an unlabeled sample. That's obviously sample 1. So let's take sample 1 before we get too much into the history. Let's go ahead and pour and start kind of nosing and smelling and looking in the glass, and start taking a look at that while I start on some of the history.
Should have removed that tape earlier. I'm just kidding. I forgot the tape. All right, I got it off.
I got to make sure it doesn't leak in transit.
True.
I've learned the hard way that electric tape can save you. Steve's jumping right on in there.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
Sure.
It shouldn't be too much of a problem figuring out which is which, because that Stitzel-Weller juice was That's all I'm going to say.
Fred is known as one of the best palates in the biz. Of course, he is on the tasting team at Buffalo Trace, helps with all of their products, and does some barrel pick stuff with them as well. Hosts some barrel picks. I saw he got to host a celebrity one recently, which is cool.
Nice.
He's a big NASCAR guy. Got to host Jimmy Johnson, so that's very cool. And then even got to do his own single barrel pick just by himself of Buffalo Trace, which of course we did an event on. So some of the folks here tonight probably did that with us. But yeah, really Fred's cool. Very active in the industry.
Anybody have any comments on their initial nosing, what they think about in the glass? If you had a chance to sip it yet, anybody have any initial thoughts of sample 1?
The nose is very good. I haven't thought about what I'm nosing, but it's very pleasant.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's otherworldly. I think that's fantastic.
It is, right?
Maybe it's because I haven't had anything to drink today and it's just hitting us right.
The first one. It's as far as in the glass, it's got a nice copper color to it. It has pretty decent legs on it as well. And it's what you think out of a 90 proof. So it's not harsh on the palate in any way to me, but it gives you a little bit of that Kentucky hug on the end, just to tell you, it tells you it's not an 80 proof. It's not even an 86 proof. It's like you get into that 90 range.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to let you
cherry
guys.
vanilla.
Yeah, I get the stone fruit cherry for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Definitely get that. I get a little bit of that burnt sugar on the nose as well as I keep going back into it.
Yeah, definitely that's on the palate too.
Yeah, it is very much a cherry cobbler kind of fried cherry pie, whatever you want to call that. So we'll jump back in and get some more notes on this as you guys get a chance to join. I'm going to jump into the history here. Obviously, as always, if you guys have any questions or comments along the way, jump in. But let's get started. So one of these two samples is an early 70s, 73 cabin still. It is from the Stitzel-Weller distillery. But let's go all the way back. So this brand is actually goes back to 1890, and it was created by W.L. Wellers and Sons. It started out as one of the two flagship original brands that the Weller and Sons came out with. The other is Mammoth Cave, which, by the way, I've never even seen a bottle of that. I'm sure there may be one at the Getz Museum. I don't have off the top of my head inventory. They got a ton of bottles there. I've never seen one at any of the Justin's House of Bourbons. Maybe somewhere like Jack Rose may have a bottle or something like that. I'm sure there's one in somebody's private collection or something like that.
Yeah, you think it's popular based on the popularity of the attraction, Mammoth Cave.
It's one of those, like, I would love to. If there's a bottle floating around and it's unsealed and unopened, it's probably an unrealistic amount of money is what somebody would want for it. I would just like to see what it looked like. I would like to see what the label looked like. I'm sure I could Google it, but it was interesting to read up that Old Cabin Still, which is what it was originally called. So bourbon history is filled with brands that wanted the old in front of it. Old Cabin Still, Old Granddad, Old Taylor, like that was one of the popular.
Old Crow.
That was one of the very popular kind of wordings that the bourbon industry just felt they had to have. And I'm sure it was originally intended to suggest that it's a properly aged, mature whiskey. So, but they were, Old Cabin Still and Mammoth Cave were the first two. William LaRue Weller himself was still alive and in charge of the business when Cabin Still was created. That tells you how old this brand is. So he was still alive and in charge of the business when it was created. When Julian Van Winkle joined the firm, this is actually the bourbon that he started selling as a salesman with the company. So when Julian Van Winkle himself started with the Weller Company, this was his prime brand that he went around and sold and peddled throughout the country. And basically it was a really popular bourbon, like a lot of bourbon was before and during Prohibition. It was also sold as a medicinal brand before and during Prohibition. It was actually before Prohibition and during, it was a medicinal only brand. So it was marketed as Old Cabin Still, and it's a medicinal whiskey. In 1935, we know that the Stitzel-Weller distillery opened. Old Fitzgerald became the flagship brand, but they still continued to make Cabin Still, and it was kind of considered their value brand as Old Fitzgerald was starting to kind of be marketed as a little bit of a higher level. From a mash bill standpoint, it's still the wheated mash bill. It was aged a little bit in a little bit less time than Weller. So Weller started getting aged in that 7-year, 8-year, 10-year, 12-year. They always kept the Cabin Still at a little bit younger age. So it was the value bourbon, kind of an everyday man kind of version. In the 1950s, they removed the old. So they were a little bit of ahead of their time. The 70s and 80s is when the country kind of went through a small revolution, and everything old was considered, your dad and granddad's, and wasn't cool anymore. So in the 50s, they removed the old. It was 90 proof, always 90 proof. and it was that 4 to 6 year old. So as we know through enough of these dusty events, the age stock from these old dusties really didn't come into play until the glut era. And so they were setting in, you get into the 60s and especially into the 70s, they were, all these distilleries were setting on all this inventory. They couldn't move it. And then they started bottling some, they let it age because they couldn't get rid of it. Then you started seeing the 10 year, the 12 year, and the 15 year, and the 20 year, and the 24 year. But in the heyday of bourbon, pre and post prohibition, it's that 4 to 6 year sweet spot that a lot of the legends like Jimmy Russell and people like that talk about. Hey, 6 years that's where I love bourbon. Like they don't like anything over 8, and they definitely don't like 10 and 12 and 15 year. So by necessity, during the glut years, they started releasing what, the big collectors and the big dusty guys, everyone wants the 15 year, and they want the 24 year this and the 20 year that. Most of your distillers back in those days would consider those extremely tannic, over oaked. They felt the bourbon was properly matured in that 6 to 8 year range. So this was always a 4 to 6 year product, 90 proof, from the 40s into the 70s. Real quick, I want to take a quick pause. I want to get some more opinions on sample number 1 while we're going through this.
And you can open up your mics, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay. It's a bigger group, but not too big. And like I said, we got Tim to help us out. If anybody forgets their mics on, he'll turn it off. You just turn it back on.
There's a long finish that kind of wraps around the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
It hugs the tongue.
Yes.
Kent Mace, what are you doing over there? What do you think, sir?
Well, I've been under the weather for a week and I'm having a hard time even smelling. So I am trying to discern. Is what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Gotcha.
We got plenty of time for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I think that as I tasted, it does evolve a little bit. You do get as we talked about, that caramelized brown sugar type of taste.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly there. I get a little citrus note in there too. I definitely get some wood, even a little like drying, like a dry wine type of note to it. And then, like I said, it does finish nice in that it sticks around, and like Fred said, kind of on the middle of your tongue. It kind of just, the heat just stays there for a little bit, so it's nice.
There's like something crisp there too, like towards the end of the finish. It's like a spearmint or something like that. I think that may be like your dry wine you're thinking of, Steve. Which is, it's a real crisp, like refreshing, like I breathe in, it feels like I had like just chewed some spearmint gum or something like that.
Yeah.
Or had a mint or
There
something.
you go.
Yeah.
Which is strange because typically, at least I kind of I get that more with high rye bourbons and ryes. I get that spearmint mint kind of freshness after you get the spice, but on wheaters I typically don't get that, so it's interesting. All right, anyone else? All right,
Let's ask a couple folks here. Let's
do. Go ahead.
We got some fun ones here. So Sally, Sally's always good because she's got. Let's hear what Sally thinks. She'll tell you how it is. There's no doubt.
Well, first off, I'm with Joey, and I hope this is the new one so that I can buy more of it.
That was my thought too. Is please let this be, please.
Yes, the caramel and there's a brightness at the end that I think I don't label it as the spearmint or the citrus, but just bright, sparkling.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brad, anything on there you want to add?
Well, we did sort of prime with some other Weller products before starting this, just getting
Sure.
the Weller palette. And I don't want to say what I think this is right now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it might mess it up.
We don't want to give anything away. Dave,
That's good.
what about you?
Mhm.
Or alternative is it's Weller Special Reserve is the newer one, right?
Is the control one? Yeah, the newer one. Yeah.
Yeah, so this does not taste anything like Special Reserve to me. So that's my
Dave's throwing
thought.
it out there. You
I'm
may
throwing it out
change
there.
after you taste the second one, though. You'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes.
I'm expecting to be be wrong based on past.
Yes. These things happen.
Anyone who's placing bets bet against me, but
Okay.
it's wonderful. I love it. It's
All
great.
right.
A lot of almond. I get a lot of almond on the nose.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is a good, different note. I like that.
I like that.
Betsy, what do you think?
I was just saying it has a really long finish that we wouldn't have expected for something that's about 90 proof. I actually get the little like buttery, almost kind of like a caramel on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's really good.
Okay. Okay. Nikki, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with I also get the fruit, the stone fruit on the nose, a little bit of creme brulee. Definitely does sit kind of there in the middle of your tongue. Nice long finish. It's really good. I'm not ready to make a guess either, but it's very tasty.
It's very tasty. I agree. This one's a winner for sure. We'll see what we think. We're not even going to check with the legend yet. Yeah. Boy, he wants to hold on to that streak, let me tell you, because he had a streak where he got everything that we did right, because we do some newer stuff too, and he missed one of those recently. I forget what it was, but he missed. I'm sure he can tell you, but he missed one. But then he wanted to point out right away his vintage whiskey is still intact. He's never missed one of those because I was just trying to say all streaks are broken, but he was like, no. This is the important one. We'll do two more here. Rob, how about you? What are your thoughts as you taste this one? And we'll pick on everybody else on that next time we kind of go through these next round.
All right. So you're going to force me, and I'm going to tell you that I think this is seemingly one of the better Weller Special Reserves I've tasted because I'm pretty damn sure that's what it is. But it tastes really good tonight. I don't know if this is just a good batch or what, but this is really, really good. It's always a pour that I enjoy. But tonight particularly so. It's got everything, I think, including what you said, Steve, about the little bit of citrus. I think that was something that jumped out at me as well, like a really nice fresh, lime or like a lemon zest maybe.
Yeah.
But then everything else you sort of, we already touched upon.
Yeah. You're talking about a very special bottle. Let's not forget we got Wes Hardin here. So he shows up at the distillery and says, Weller Special Reserve. They can say, oh, we got to get that from the back room. And they come back. He's like, I'll just grab one off the shelf. They're like, no. We'll get it for you.
We just picked a honey barrel here.
Wes is a big deal. So yeah.
They just go right to the end of the bottling line and pick whichever one I want. I don't have to pay for it or anything.
No, heck no. He just gives a nod and goes on.
In 6 years, there'll be a Netflix documentary called Weller Special Reserve Gate. I'll be in there in some capacity.
Yes.
It'll be Wes's Special Reserve when it's over.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll do one more, Mr. Whitlatch. What are your thoughts as you taste this one? Oh, you're on mute.
He's blown away.
Yeah. He's lost his voice. There he goes.
This is very elegant whiskey, soft nose and sweet, caramely, just beautiful finish. I get that bright tingle, halfway to the finish. It's very, very tasty.
Yeah. All right, Wes, we'll turn it back over to you. And like I said, we'll get some of the other folks. We'll make sure everyone's involved in the tasting. So,
all right, so let's get into more of some of this history. So again, just to recap, it was from post-prohibition until basically the early 70s. It was a 90 proof, 4 to 6 years. It was also marketed kind of what they called the Sportsman brand, and especially in their decanter series, which is what this came out of. I don't know if it was an official partnership or not. I'm assuming it was because of trademarks and so forth. But they bottled a lot of these decanters with a Ducks Unlimited theme. So there was a glass, there are kind of skinny glass decanters. There are the regular, white ceramic decanters with different Ducks Unlimited scenes. And they actually moved a lot of this cabin still whiskey right before or right during the bourbon glut at the end of the 60s and through some of the 70s through this Ducks Unlimited relationship through the decanter series. So there's a lot of cool different between the glass and the ceramic. There's a lot of cool decanters still running around of this stuff, and it's one of those examples of if you were to to go and take a 1960s Old Fitzgerald 8-year Stitzel-Weller, pristine condition, and try to sell it to someone on the street. People are going to pay almost anything up to a certain amount to get that, because it's Stitzel-Weller and it's Old Fitzgerald, and it's great whiskey, absolutely great whiskey. Most of those same people would pass on one of these decanters of cabin still, which is, oh, by the way, also Stitzel-Weller, also around the 6-year mark during that glut period of decanters. Pardon me?
Kent's got one he's showing to the camera there.
Oh yeah, let me see that real quick. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Beautiful.
That's what they look like.
Yep, absolutely. And so, people will pass on those because what they know today of cabin still. There you go, broken cork. Get used to that. Wine corks work wonderfully on those, Kent, by the way. Be very careful. He knows. So yeah, a lot of people will pass on those decanters because there's this weird, crazy wives' tale that all of the decanters from the 60s and 70s and 80s are full of lead and they'll kill you and you can't drink the bourbon and so forth. But they're a great dusty value if anyone runs across any from a trusted seller. Then it's got to be sealed with the tax strip still intact. But it just goes, this is why I love these old brands. If you know the history of the brand and the history of the labels, you can kind of get really good deals and steal some really good whiskey that's literally the same or equal to really high priced, well-known whiskey that people just don't take the time to do the history behind it, which is another reason I like doing these events, to kind of give people a heads up in case they run across someone that has one of these. After this event, they will have tasted it. They'll have an understanding of how good or bad, depending on if they like it or not, it is, and it may help them justify a good purchase later in life. So yeah, all those decanters, they had that partnership with Ducks Unlimited, and that was the way they got rid of some of that glut era juice. Once the 70s hit, obviously we know the bourbon downturn started. Stitzel-Weller actually changed the proof to 86 for the bottles. But they also started using some older stock. So a lot of whiskey in the glut era, it ended up being older than age stated. The age statement is only the minimal, the shortest age of any whiskey that's in the blend. But they did knock it down to 86 proof. They started using older stocks. Here's a key moment for this brand. In 1972, Van Winkle sold Stitzel-Weller Distillery to Norton Simon. Norton Simon, for the most part at the time, was not into a lot of distilled spirits. They were actually more of a soda company than anything, but they jumped in. They purchased the distillery. During the acquisition of Stitzel-Weller, Norton Simon also purchased a distillery in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And they actually made, and I didn't know this, they made Canada Dry spirits. So I did Google this. If you Google it, it's pretty interesting. There actually were bourbons called Canada Dry Bourbon. And this is where knowing the history also comes into play. If you look at the bottle, you take one look at the bottle and you see that it's from Stitzel-Weller Distillery, because that's where it was bottled. The bottle looks just like the old Fitzgerald 8, 10, 12, 15-year bottles. However, the trick is it's not Stitzel-Weller. So what they started doing is, they were bottling this Canada Dry bourbon from this Nicholasville, Kentucky distillery. They also made gin and vodka there as well. This was considered by a lot of, that time period's bourbon, I guess you would call them bourbon historic writers, tasters, and so forth, as quote unquote some of the worst bourbon they've ever tasted out of this Nicholasville, Kentucky facility. So what they also did is they're selling this Canada Dry bourbon from the Nicholasville distillery, putting a label on it and putting it in a bottle presentation, suggests that it comes from Stitzel-Weller. So everyone says, oh, it's Stitzel-Weller, it's got to be good, right? It looks just like an old Fitzgerald bottle. It says it's from Stitzel-Weller, which it was bottled there, but it's this, I'll call it this rot gut terrible bourbon from Nicholasville. So they were doing that with the old Fitzgerald brand. What they also did is they stopped bottling cabin still with the Stitzel-Weller bourbon and they started bottling this Canada Dry bourbon out of Nicholasville to get rid of all of that stock. As they closed that facility down, took all the aged stock from Nicholasville out to Stitzel-Weller to either finish aging or for bottling. The one exception to that was the decanter series. So that's why you can still get Ducks Unlimited decanters from the late 70s and early 80s that are Stitzel-Weller bourbon. When you get into the cabin still regular shelf glass bottles past 72, I would stay away from those. 1972 till present, cabin still is not Stitzel-Weller, no matter what the label says, if it's in a glass bottle. And for all intents and purposes, for a lot of bourbon historians that I trust what they say, is some of the worst bourbon they've ever had. So it's kind of a buyer beware. So as we are all out and about and friends find bottles and you see bottles here and the state sells this and all those kind of things, those are key items. If you have anything from Cabin Still, feel free to message me if you have any question, but just be very careful. If it's in a glass bottle and it's past 72, I would pass on it unless it's free or cheap. If it's in a decanter, depending on how you like the sample as it comes out tonight, then you're probably pretty safe suggesting that it's Stitzel-Weller bourbon. But the 1972 Norton Simon basically ruined the brand. As a note, today it's a bottom shelf brand. It's owned by Heaven Hill. It's 80 proof. It's 3-year-old offering, and it's just considered a mixer at best, or whatever you want to call it from there. It's sad because we end up a lot of times in these Dusty events, we end up with the end of the story is a once well-respected brand from a well-respected distillery today finds itself as a 2 to 3 year old 80 proof bourbon on the bottom shelf that nobody cares about. You can run down the list: Old Taylor, Cabin Still, Old Crow, Old Charter. Now some of the things they're doing now with Old Charter and the Oak series are cool, but after the 8-year age statement went away and it went down to 80 proof, and we had this whole thing with the number 8 labeling, Old Charter is another one of those brands that was the top seller, prominent, high thought of, and is kind of more of a bottom shelf mixer now. So it's an unfortunate ending to a lot of our stories. I know I sound like a broken record at a lot of these events, but that's the reality of some of
I guess it makes sense, Wes. If you think about it, if if you run a distillery, you're going to have some, you need to sell some volume too. There has to be some volume selling that goes on there. And there's, and it makes sense that they just use it based on the names. Those are big names at one point, and still have some cachet today, even though they've long been bottom shelf. Because if you're doing any sort of, Google searches of old brands or old advertisements, you see these old brands there, you see Cabin Still advertising, like, I'd like to try that. That's been around a long time. So because if you just started a brand and it just intended for the bottom shelf at those, $9 price tags that some of these are at, could you ever get anybody to gravitate towards it with no brand name recognition and that type of price? Yeah, it'd be tough. So
it would be really tough.
I get what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cabin Still, it's another great historic brand that kind of was left to the wayside. The problem nowadays is we always talk about, we would love to see Old Crow. We would love for Jim Beam to take the Old Crow brand, take some well-aged stock, do a once a year, twice a year, once a 5-year super cool release, and kind of bring some prominence back to like a really cool brand. But the problem with that is and I'm all for it, but from a business standpoint, they're only going to attract the bourbon enthusiasts / dusty hunters who knew how good that was when it was National Distillers, before they lost the yeast strain and screwed up the formulation. And there's never going to be enough to go around for those people. And they know they're only going to make people mad because it's going to be a limited release, and not all the enthusiasts who want it are going to get it. So they're going to take a beating on social media. So for them, it's a lose-lose scenario.
I guess
but I would love to have it.
I want to take the contrarian side. And again, we don't know the answer here. And they have people that are paid more and smarter than even Wes and I, as hard as that is to believe. But the contrarian side of me would say, if you did an Old Crow release once a year, you did some really well-aged stocks, like 17-year-old stuff that was really good, and you released 7,000 bottles, which is kind of a Four Roses limited edition equivalent. Yeah. So again, tough to find, can be found. Certainly it would attract people like are on an event, a whiskey tasting event, the people like us. And I agree, it would sell out. There would be more demand than you could get, but I would think that would create some goodwill for the brand for that bottom shelf thing too, because we know how the bourbon world is. I think that would uplift a little bit of what's going on the bottom. Now, for us, we would be able to separate that. For the people who are well-educated, we know this has nothing to do with the bottom shelf. This is the special release they do of this once a year. But I would think it would actually maybe also give them an extra buck or two that they could probably put on that bottom shelf one if the demand goes crazy. It could be a good thing.
I agree. I would say that one company that's doing a really good job of bringing back, and they've only brought back a couple, but they've to me they've done a stellar job of bringing back old labels, is Old Forester. So yeah. They went down the path that we're talking about. Let's take an old historic label, King of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. They could have come out with a 86 or a 90 proof 4-year, and it would have been good. It would have tasted like one of their normal off the shelf offerings. It just would have had a cool bottle and tube, but they didn't. They went barrel strength, and they went for a little more age and made it this, once or twice a year type of big release. And it's a hit.
It's very equivalent of that, because isn't it like early time stock that again is off profile in a good way? So
off profile in a good way, a little more age, barrel proof.
Yeah. So something like that could happen. It's kind of cool to think about, but I don't know if it'll ever happen.
All right, let's pour sample 2, and let's get some quick opinions, initial impressions. See if anybody changes their mind from their initial thoughts, or they're still on the same track.
I was pleased, Wes. We had voting for both going on. If you noticed, if you're paying attention there,
I love it. Part of the reason we started these Dusty events, and I think the first 2, maybe 3, we just sampled just the Dusty itself. And there's going to be times where it's hard to find something that's a modern day equivalent or close to make a blind competition a competition. But once we started that, at all costs, I want to make sure I continue that, because part of what I love about doing this, I know the answer. So I'm listening to I'm the only one that doesn't get to do this blind. Steve does not even know. He has no idea.
I started off saying it was old granddad. I forgot. I couldn't cheat by looking at the bottles because it just sample. I was like,
So what I love is the great thing about blind tasting is I love the power of suggestion. I love the power of first impression. I think a lot of people in their mind, we're at an event, so that's when your senses are heightened and your excitement's up, and that first pour, no matter which one it is always going to be the one that's like, oh man, that's the greatest pour ever. And then they get to the second, and sometimes it wasn't the greatest pour ever, the second wasn't, or vice versa. I just love the mystery behind it, and people kind of starting in one area and swaying back.
The nose is incredible.
Yeah,
oh man.
Oh yeah,
very good.
So full disclosure and earmuffs for any children around. We both took our first smell on the nose and went, fuck.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim.
Yep.
Just as a nice poke at fun of Phil Collin, because I love him, but I like to poke fun at him. Just mark that in this Dusty event, and just send a little thing out, said, cover your ears, Phil. There's a dirty word at minute number, blah,
exactly.
blah, blah.
You got it.
You got it.
I've let this one open up a little bit. There was a traditional nose that I would catch on a certain type of whiskey that's no longer there anymore. That has me guessing. I couldn't even tell you which one of these two are right now. There was a dusty funk there at the beginning for a while, and then all of a sudden it's cleaned up after it's been sitting in the glass this whole time. This one's spectacular.
I definitely have an opinion which is which now.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's why you definitely got to do both, right? And these blind tastings, it's the great equalizer. It definitely is.
Was it the last one or the one before that I think almost everyone besides the legend had it wrong? I think he was one of the only ones that had it right. I can't remember which one that was, but
yeah.
Well, he also voted last and used a process of elimination. If the crowd's going one way, I can't go wrong going the opposite way. So
I'll change the order tonight.
Okay, that's good.
Anyone have any nosing notes or even tasting notes if you've tasted it yet?
I feel
I
like
get a really,
kinda-
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like this hits kind of oaky.
Kind of oaky. Okay.
Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of that oak. I get super heavy like creme brulee.
Yeah. A
on
lot
the
of
nose,
caramel.
like a ton of caramel. Got
Yeah.
that brown sugar too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit of cinnamon, which is really strange for a weeder. I will say in the glass, there's a dramatic color difference. At least I think it is.
Yeah.
This
sure.
is more
Oh
of
my God, yes.
This is more of an amber, I think, versus a copper.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
some would call that patina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mahogany.
Mahogany.
We've already determined that was the winner of a bracket challenge last year. I think
True.
mahogany.
True. Mahogany is the ultimate
Mahogany
bourbon color.
This has that finish that coats the tongue, wraps around the tongue like the first sample did.
Yeah, you know what's odd about it? I agree. What's odd about that is I say the legs are comparable between 1 and 2. I don't see, like, a lot of times we'll have, ironically, and some of it may be just age. A lot of times when we do these, we find that we've had the Dusties that are a little thinner on the legs, but we also had the recent addition of whatever it is thin on the legs. These two seem pretty viscous between both, I think.
Yeah. This one kind of heats up for me too on the upper palate on the finish, which is different. So
top of roof of my mouth.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's where it hits. It's different.
I got that dusty taste on the first sip too, and then that kind of went away after it sat out for a bit.
Yes. Yeah, that's what that was my initial, when I initially nosed it, I said, "Ooh, dusty funk." But I don't know. Maybe I was in my own head there. I don't know. We'll see.
Say, I would not turn away a pour of either one.
No.
Joey, any tasting notes you want to share? Nosing notes, finish, anything?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I always am a little bit different. I feel like I get oaky and licorice for me.
Okay.
Oaky and licorice.
Different
Yeah.
from the lovely caramels and that everybody else is getting. So
Yeah.
it feels darker, in general to me than the first one.
Yeah. Okay.
I like it. It's delicious.
Yeah. Nate, how about you? What are your thoughts as you're tasting through this one?
I definitely think that this one seems a little bit more, I almost want to say harsher than the first one. Like, was super juicy. This one is more like, I don't know. I'm getting more heat, more. I don't know if it's spice or almost like a kind of sour or something.
Yeah, this one doesn't have the dark fruit notes that the first one had. This is more on the savory caramel. To me, it's on the caramel, savory, burnt sugar kind of realm. The other one was a little crisper and had more of that. I think Steve or someone said cherry, stone fruit, whatever, a hearty fruit, I think would be the way.
Yeah. Robert, how about you?
I think I get a lot of like smokiness. I actually texted my brother and my dad and I joked and I said that I think this one tastes more like how I imagine the 70s smelled. And I I get a smoky, I'm picturing like a parlor or something like from the 70s era. That's what I get, I guess. I probably in my head about it now, but that's
what I got. A lot of smoking back in the rick houses back then,
Sure.
Yeah,
Of course.
that's where it's coming from.
Jack, how about you? What are your thoughts on the taste of this one?
He's speechless.
Jack, you there?
Oh yeah. Hey.
He looks like he's working. It looks like he's at work or something. And yeah, because he's kind of off to the side, staring straight ahead.
Sorry.
Not at us. Not at us.
No, I had that initial waft when I first poured it that it seemed very kind of medicinal. So I can't get over how much it's changed, but it's got a creaminess that the other one didn't have, and just I mean incredibly enjoyable. It definitely feels like there's history in the glass. So
yeah. Tim, how about you, man?
I absolutely love the first one. The second one here, there's more. I feel like there's more oak, and I agree with Robert about the little bit of the smokiness in there too as well.
A little smoky.
Almost like I almost say like I'm drinking coffee at the same time, which I shouldn't be doing right now. But it's almost like an older coffee note there too as well.
I wonder why.
Yeah, wonder why you're getting that coffee note there as you're doing the 50-50 mix. Oh man, it's wild. Yeah, weird, Tim. Yeah.
It's just like coffee.
Oh, the legend.
Yeah.
I'm glad he wasn't eating Limburger cheese.
Yeah.
No, a lot of caramel, some oak. I feel this is a little bit more complex than the first one.
Okay.
Steve, do we want to commence some voting?
Hey, you tell me, man.
Unless someone else, and we can, and as we're voting, if you want to give any notes or anything, we can do that.
Okay.
For any, I think most everyone's been on one of these events. If you haven't, what we do towards the end, after we sampled and had some discussion about it, we like to take everyone's vote on two things. One, which one was your favorite? And two, which one you thought was the dusty? Or you can say, it doesn't matter. You can say which one you thought was the dusty or which one you thought was the more recent. So what I typically do, Steve, you keeping score?
Yep.
Steve will keep score. And I'm going to go across my screen in reverse order this time. And we're going to start with Dave. So Dave, you are up. We would like to know which one you like the best and which one you think is the dusty.
I'm probably going to be completely wrong here, but I'm going for number one was my favorite, and number one is the dusty.
You're wrong. Favorite? I'm kidding.
One was dusty.
Wrong.
Incorrect.
Right. Incorrect. Try again. All right. My screen keeps changing, so we'll just keep up with it. Tim, you're up next.
All right. My favorite is one, but I think two is the dusty. I'm going back to them both after they're empty, just the empty glass in the nose. And both these things are just amazing. And this is when you want to sit on the kitchen counter for the night after, come back tomorrow morning. It smells like a barrel house. It's just gorgeous. Both of them.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go, Joey. You're next.
Well, I'm going to be, I think my favorite is one.
Okay.
The dusty is two, and I'm disappointed in myself that it's not my favorite.
There's no shame in that. You should not be disappointed.
All right, let's go to Robert Mace. Rob.
I think number two is the dusty, and my favorite was number one.
Okay. All right, I feel like a radio DJ taking callers. Let's go to Jack. Jack, you're on line 4.
I hate to be repetitive. Number one might be my favorite, and number two is definitely the dusty to me.
All right. So what's the tally so far, Steve?
So right now, the favorite by a score of 5-0 is number one.
Okay.
The dusty, we've got one person thinks it's number one, 4 think it's number 2.
All right. Let's go caller number 6, Rob.
All right, good news. I'm taking that goose egg and I'm gonna change it. I'm going number 2 and number 2 for myself. I can't avoid and I can't put down that flavor, which I think is like a Luden's cough drop meets a caramel chew, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah.
That's well done.
All right. Let's go to Betsy and Nikki.
Hi, first time caller, long time listener.
Hoo-ah.
I'm voting 2 and 2 for me for both. 2 is the Dusty and 2 is my
Another
favorite. This
double
is
deuce
my
on the board.
Okay.
Yep. I agree too. A 2 and 2.
2 and 2. The old Chuck Woolery. Would he become? We'll be back in 2 and 2. 2 and 2. 2 and 2.
I'll channel my inner Steve Akeley and the bracket competition to say number 2's making a comeback.
Yes, it is.
All right, let's go. Kent Mace.
He's
Kent,
struggling,
were you able
but yeah, let's see.
You're struggling. Let's see what happens here.
So it is interesting when your smell is
right. It's totally yeah.
It smells like green snot. Sorry. But Fred said something about. I'm going tasting notes first. Sorry. Fred said something about they both coat his tongue. I number 2 by far is more viscous in the mouth to me. And I believe that's the Dusty. It is my favorite. And the reason it's my favorite, there is a lot of complexity to it, but it just tastes to me like it's been around a while. It's had time to relax. And he's kind of like me, set in its ways. And I'm okay with that. So
all right,
number 2 is my favorite as well.
Okay.
All right, number 2 making a comeback. Let's go with Nate Mace.
Okay, so I thought it was interesting. Rick said that he thought number 2 was more complex, which I think was a good way to describe it. And while I like things that are complex, sitting there and drinking something that's complex for a while can really drain on you. So I'm going to say number 1 would be the one that I would choose, like, to drink all the time. So number 1's my favorite. And I don't want Dave to be the only one going 1 as the Dusty. So I'm going to say number 1's a Dusty.
Great.
All right.
All right. Let's go Brad and Sally.
This is good. Sometimes they are just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And there's, we sometimes we've had to hang up on them when they got bickering too much. That's enough. They were trying to do an event here.
These events.
All right. Who's up first here? Sally, looks like you're ready to go. What do you got?
Sure, I'll go. I'm going to pick 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
I think
Okay.
I may have been a little predisposed to choosing 2 as my favorite because my work from home office is the dining room, and we have several pieces of antique furniture upon which Brad stores some bourbon. And I was complaining last week that you got to come in here and see which one of these bottles is leaking because I smell it coming through the wood.
I was drying dill.
So it was dill.
It must have been MGP then.
Number 2, essence of dill.
No. All right, Brad, how about you?
Number 1 was my favorite. And number 2 is my Dusty.
Okay.
I do think number 1 might have been a special reserve, single barrel, or I'm just wrong and it's the Dusty. But
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Steve, help me out because my screen keeps changing.
Bob Whitlatch hasn't gone yet.
Okay, I thought Bob and Fred were left, and then the legend. I think
And then a legend, and then me too.
And then yourself. So let's go.
And
Bob.
did Rob Bean?
We did get Rob.
Okay, you got Rob. Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. Bob, you're up.
I think number 1's the Dusty, only because it's completely unfamiliar to me.
Okay.
No, number 2 is my favorite. I tend to drink a lot of special reserve, so 1's the Dusty, 2's my favorite.
Okay.
All right. Let's go with the legend.
2 and 2.
2 and 2.
The old 2 and 2, short and simple. I like it.
Yep.
He's spoken.
All right, Fred.
2 and 2.
There's
just so much more with number 2 and the more mouthfeel with 2. So 2 and 2.
I think I've done a pretty good job of keeping up with this. I will apologize if I missed anyone. Has anyone not given their, besides Steve, has anyone else not given their, we always leave Steve to last.
Yeah.
I think we got everyone, Steve.
Okay. I'm 2 and 2. 2 and 2. 2 and 2.
All right. So what's the final tally here?
Okay, well, we know that one jumped out by a huge margin to start this thing out, but it did not end up in first place. The favorite of the evening was number 2 by a close score, 9-7. 9-7 was the final on there.
Okay.
And then the vote for the Dusty is 13 said number 2 is the Dusty. 3 did say number 1 is the Dusty. So we do have votes on both sides there. So it'll be interesting. So now, Wes, we turn it back over to you to tell us what we've actually got here.
All right. So what I like about, although I hope to find one that is contrary to it, because I like kind of flipping the world upside down. But once again, the majority of the crowd is spot on. Number 2 is the Dusty, and the legend streak is still intact.
I was nervous over there. I was back and forth.
Not even.
Oh, he'd have been, yeah. Oh, he'd have been, yeah.
I will say for, I think, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head that said, where are we at? Jack, I think, someone said they thought the special reserve was a single barrel. Actually, it wasn't Jack. I know it was.
It was Brad. It was Brad.
It was Brad. It was not a single barrel, Brad. It was just 2020, I think it was. Just
I don't think they do the
regular
special
blend.
reserve in single barrels. Do they, Fred?
No, they do.
They
do.
do?
I have one. Yeah, I have one.
Oh,
They can
most
be.
people-
They don't do a lot of them, but I do have one. They can be like any single barrel. They can be really off profile, and some of those would probably stand up to some pretty well thought of bourbons in a blind tasting.
They do, and a lot are mistakenly taken off the rack, proof down. They were supposed to be antique picks.
That makes
Mistakenly
sense.
Picked down, proof down, and they got to be special reserve. So.
They're nowadays they're far and few between. I don't see them very often, but I do see them. I was able to acquire one, and it's like a lot of single barrels. It was really good. So I was actually even sitting here. I like special reserve. It's not my favorite of the Weller lineup, but I do like it. But even knowing what it was, I was surprised at how well it held up myself. Just saying,
it's great. I think it's incredibly great. I think you do hear a lot of knocks about it, but it's just people were mad because they see these crazy secondary prices at liquor stores, and it gets them mad at the brand. But don't get mad at the brand. Get mad at the liquor store or the people. Even worse, it's not even the liquor stores. It's the people who pay those crazy prices that makes the liquor stores continue to do it again and again. They wouldn't keep putting those crazy. They wouldn't. There's a place here in St. Louis that sells special reserve. I can get you guys. Anybody who wants a bottle, raise your hand. I'll get it to you. $150 a bottle plus shipping. I can get it sent your way if you want it. It's on the shelf now if you need it. It's terrible.
The frustrating part about some of today's bourbon drinkers, and more so some of the newer enthusiasts, is everyone. And I like barrel proof bourbons when they're done right, but everyone's on this barrel proof kick, and there's these people that won't drink anything under 100 proof, and they just totally discard 86 and 90 proof. And there's a lot of 86 and 90 proof that is so far watered down that it's not very good, but there's a lot of good 90 proof, 94 proof, 100 proof bourbons out there that, and I think you could burn your palate out going high octane. I think it's always good to kind of keep your palate refreshed with all the different. It's like the professional singers when they're warming up, they don't sing only high notes or only bass low notes. They sing through the different notes to kind of warm up their vocals and get everything working. I think to keep your palate fresh, you have to do that with the different proofs and the different mash bills as well.
Yeah.
Got a couple of questions for you, Wes. Can you tell us where you got both the different bottles from? And the other thing is, I want to tell everybody, remember to smell your empty glass.
Oh, I love doing that. That's one of my, I will set mine out overnight and leave it on my desk or wherever I'm drinking just in the morning, just to go and smell. Usually you get the most pure burnt sugar, caramel, no matter what it is, rye, high rye, wheated bourbons, odd flavor grains. You always get that really unique smell afterwards.
This makes me feel so much better. I always save my dishes for the next morning, and that's kind of, I think, subtly why. It's like, this is fantastic. I love doing bourbon dishes the next day. Yes.
No, the special reserve I just got locally at a liquor store here. Just walked in one day when they had a shipment, and they always sell them at retail, and they go the same day. And I just happened to walk in, and they were literally putting cases out, and grabbed a bottle for the event. Otherwise, I was going to have to find it from someone to help me out.
Joey can always help you out with that, by the way. She's in Oklahoma.
Perfect.
They've got it there, right, Joey? Yeah, it's a shelf.
We have it here in all the sizes and all the good prices. So
perfect.
Yeah, crazy.
Got a hook up now. It's perfect.
Yep.
Where are you, Wes?
I'm in Louisville.
Oh, so Joey, are you in Louisville also?
I'm in Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City gets tons of special reserve, tons.
Yeah,
it's like Texas.
Yeah, the 1 point, they got the one every time Danny goes through, he picks up 1.75, and they're really affordable.
You can get a small, medium, large bottle on your way.
Yeah.
Where are you at? What store are you at?
I'm not in a store.
Oh,
they're in all stores actually.
I'm in Norman. That's
okay. I'm up here in Oklahoma City. Okay.
We sell the special reserve at Buffalo Trace a couple times a week.
Yep.
I can pick you up a bottle if you want.
There you go.
There it is. That's all you need.
Now that's a real hookup right there.
That is a real hookup.
Right. It's factory fresh when Fred gets it.
Yeah. The second part of Mr. Mace's question was, where did I get the Dusty? So this particular case, I went out and searched the Dusty market. I know people that just, believe it or not, there are people that just literally are setting on cases and shelves full of anything. And I wanted to do a Stitzel-Weller event. I knew the biggest bang for everyone's buck was going to be the cabin still. When you get into some of the other, the old Fitzgeralds and the Van Winkles from that age, you're getting into crazy prices that we would never ask people to try to pay for in one of these events. So I sought it out because I wanted to do it. I know it's a polarizing distillery. I love the history of the cabin still. It's again, I kind of get enamored with these rags or riches to rags stories with some of these old brands. And I have had one of these. This is not the first cabin still decanter I've had. They were always phenomenal. So if nothing else, it was a chance to grab one, share it with everyone, and have another pour for myself.
Well, thanks, Wes, because, in doing some research for this, obviously this is a great value. One of the best values that we are on, $50 for this event. Literally, we were looking at bars that have this exact same product in stock. And if you want to enjoy it in the ambiance of a great bar, it'll cost you at least $200 for the pour. So, you get the whole class. Wes brings all the education, and you get the fun of the tasting, see if the legend streak continues. There's a lot of dynamic stuff that goes on at these events. So, yeah.
What I like about it is, and there are a lot of good vintage bars. There's a lot of good vintage bourbon stores that will sell bottles. They also sell pours as well. But I think you have to be very, very detail oriented and kind of watch what they're offering. So there's one in the Kentucky area that blasts social media all the time with, hey, come in today. Our Dusty of the day is a 1960s Four Roses, and it's $20 a taste. Well, the key word is a taste. So the question is, what are you getting for a taste? What you find out is a taste is half an ounce, and it's barely enough to take a sip. So you have to really be careful with those kind of things when you're at bars and vintage bottle shops and things of that nature. If they're not telling you exactly how many ounces you're getting, if they're charging 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, $100, it's well within your right as a consumer laying that kind of money down to be able to ask exactly how much you get with that. Because when they use words like sample and taste and very vague descriptors, chances are you're not getting an ounce. You may not even be getting a half ounce. Sometimes it's like a quarter ounce is $100 for a 1920 something pre-pro medicinal bottle of pH Stitzel or whatever the case is. And to each their own. If people want that, I just like to always make sure people educate themselves on ensuring you get what you want. So our goal here is to share. I love sharing the history. That's my favorite part of it. I like the blind tasting, but more importantly, it gives people a chance to taste something that for the most affordable price, I think is out there for the amount of whiskey you get in the samples. That's kind of our goal.
Cool. Very cool. Well, how about a round of applause for Wes Hardin for really bringing it to us tonight, having a great event. very enjoyable.
Thank you. Thank you.
What we'll do is, of course, we'll turn off the recorder now. I'll stick around. Wes will probably be able to stick around for a little bit, and we'll say goodbye to our audience that is watching this at home as well as on YouTube. Anybody who follows us on
one quick thing before we turn off, Steve, because anybody that wasn't able to join and listen, I do want to do a little quick promo for our November event. So in November, and the event's already out there. I know a couple of events ago, we looked at a Dusty Old Grandad 86 proof. And one of the things we talked about in that event, we always try to ask, what else do you want? What do you guys want to taste? What do you want me to go look for? And one of the comments was, hey, Old Grandad, they had the 114 Dusty, which was always considered a pretty phenomenal pour. So we've got that set up for November. Steve has already sent out the initial blitz. We'll do some advertising. It's out there, but we're doing another blind tasting of today's Old Grandad 114 versus a Dusty Indy 114.
That is a special product because it was the first really high proof type of bourbon, because in reality they always had the 114, and really everything else at that time was 100 at the most, really.
Yep.
And a lot of it was 86 or 80. So the fact that you've got something 114 from back in the day is pretty darn cool. I love that. And we made the event even cooler because we have 8th generation distiller Freddie No is going to be joining us on that event. So what an amazing time to be able to spend. We only sell well, only because we got Freddie now, we got to give a sample. So only 19 tickets are available to that event. So a very minimal amount. So please, if you want to, I mean, the opportunity just to, you know, if Freddie knows at an event, a dinner or something like that, you're talking usually a couple $100. And this is, again, a $50 event. So really great time. And of course, Freddie will stick around to answer any questions. He told me he's got just made a big purchase for Beam that'll go into their like Heritage Center, but he's got them all at the No household right now of a lot of old labels, and he wants to share some of you show you guys some of the old labels that they've got and things like that, and some of them we bringing back, and but he wants to share some of that too. So it should be just an amazing event, and he'll be playing the game with us too. So we'll see if we can stump Freddie. If the legend beat Freddie? Well, it's
mono.
Yeah, because we're not going to tell him either. He's going to get the same samples I do, just as sample 1 and 2. So we'll see.
Well, maybe Freddie and I are both be wrong, like Fonte and I were both be wrong on the Yellowstone pick.
Yes, that's the one. I was on Yellowstone. It wasn't Dusty's. It was barrel picks versus the everyday shelfie. And Fonte also got it wrong, which he was bad himself because he drinks that every day. Literally, he said, "There's never a day when I'm not on my job when I'm not drinking."
And I had 2 that I was going back and forth with, and my second pick would have been right, but
he questioned himself.
The power of blind tasting.
Yeah. But I thought, at least if I got it wrong, Fonte got it wrong too, so I was in good company.
So he feels better about that. So
yeah,
I did get it right though. He should have followed me. Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, again, we'll say goodbye, turn off the recorder, and we'll stick around. Any questions you want to talk bourbon, ABV Network. Of course, you may want to go out there and order Bourbon Assignments, my hot new book that is scorching up the charts on Amazon. So appreciate you doing that too. So put in a plug for that. I will include information about Wes's event in the email I send out to everybody that has this in there. So if you're looking for that event, I'll have that in the email that'll have the recorded version on there. So thanks, guys. Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.